to make it short, there are basically two different issues. One, there was a class action by the Consumer Association in 2013, started about the Swiss loans in the Swiss francs. The first degree judgment was done in 2014. It was overturned in 2015 by the High Commercial Court, which was confirmed by the Supreme Court in 2013, 14, 15. Then part of it was overturned in 2016 by the Constitutional Court, and only 2 days ago, Supreme Court overturned again and returned the whole thing back to the second degree court. So it's still not over. But the question was that the loans were, the foreign clause was declared valid and legal, because it has always been in Croatia and it's a well-known. There was the verdict was that the banks were guilty of not clearly defining the ways of variable interest rate. But it was not said they shouldn't have changed the rate. It did not say they increase the rate too much. It was just, it was not clear to the consumers as by the consumer protection law it should be. So there any damages, the court refused to declare any damages, so it left to the consumers. In the meantime, in 2015 there was a big jump of Swiss franc. We did have two voluntary measures to reduce basically the burden on the debtors. But that jump then caused the government to make a pretty violent action, and it was an election year. As usually it happens, they wanted then made a forceful conversion of the loans in September 2015. In spite of all the recommendations from the Croatian Central Bank, from the European Commission, from the World Bank and from International Monetary Fund, who said that any solution should be voluntary, socially differentiated, and with a fair share of the costs. So in fact they put all the costs on the banks. There was no socially discriminated, which means people who bought 4 apartments for business, for renting them, not to live them, they also were kind of awarded some kind of reduction in the money. The cost to the banks was more than 1 billion euros. So it was consumed, it was done, the conversion was done, except the cases now, which is the second part, in front of the arbitration in Washington, and the European Commission most likely put it into infringement package in November after the several steps already, and send it to the court in Luxembourg. So now it's a question that it was consumed, it was done, it cannot be reversed, but who will pay the damages? And it's very likely that the government will finally have to pay at least one part of this 1 billion euro damages. So that's with the Swiss franc. The story is still open and continuing. Well, the reason why the capital adequacy was very high are historical, far before the recession hit. For some other reasons, it was cheaper for the banks to increase the capital than to have the deposits or loans from their mother banks. 90% of Croatian banks are owned by the international groups. So for them it was basically cheaper, which resulted in a huge, about close to 20% capital adequacy, while the legal requirement was 12%. Now, as after the crisis, European Union started to increase the capital requirements and all these layers and everything else. It was transposed also in Croatian legislation, and it stayed where it is. The credit market is very, let's say, stagnating for the last almost 10 years now. So there is enough capital. The banks were not withdrawing capital because the central bank wouldn't be too happy about that. So that stayed with a huge capital adequacy, which will probably be reduced if we finally get more of the credit growth. But the economy is growing without the credits, which is also the phenomenon known in the other countries. The first group of challenges are the same as all of our countries have, which means the regulatory challenges, because we know that always complying with all the new initiatives, just to mention General Data Protection Regulation, International Accounting Standards, IFRS 9, now Payment System Directive 2, we all have the same challenges as everybody else. Croatia may have another challenge because we are now, will start procedure to introduce euro, which, you know, the public discussion will be open, and hopefully the Croatia will apply to enter the ERM2, and then if everything goes well, maybe 2022 the euro will be introduced in Croatia, so it's another challenge. Other than that, the economy is growing, as everywhere else. Probably would all like to grow more. The results are good, the bank results, the public deficit is going down, the budget deficit, the public debt is going down. So on that aspect, seeing Croatia is doing well, but challenges will be, as we all know. And of course, if any other financial crisis or any other crisis hits, then we're all in the same boat as is the Czechia and all the other countries.